Hello and welcome to Free Expression from the opinion page of the Wall Street Journal. I'm Gerry Baker, editor-at-large of the Journal. Thanks very much for watching and listening. If you're not already subscribing to Free Expression, please do so at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you do your listening. And please also, of course, leave us a nice review and a good 5 stars.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Free Expression with Gerry Baker.
This week, taking a little bit of a break from the earthly matters, the hurly-burly of politics and economics and markets, and we're going to take a look at the little question of the existence of God. Now, of course, this is a question that has been on the minds, literally, of just about every single human that ever existed, and it continues to be so. Arguably, there's something of a revival of interest in religion in the last few years, after a long period where in this country, and indeed in much of the developed world, religion has been declining. But the particular topic I want to look at today is the question of the existence of God in relation to the evolving understanding of scientific evidence about the world and the universe, the cosmos. It's been typically the case, I think, throughout human history that religion and science have pretty much been in tension over centuries. The more scientific knowledge that was acquired by humans, the more it tended to challenge or even disprove religious beliefs, as we came to understand that many of the things that were previously explicable were actually scientific phenomena that had, actually understandable scientific sources. Those people, those ideas that these had to be somehow divinely ordained, fell away. And so there's generally been that sort of sense that means that the more that we learn about the world, the more we learn about the material world, the more scientific understanding we have, the more the evidence for God, if you like, the faith in the belief in the existence of a God, the more that declines. But my guest this week is someone who argues that that's been turned on its head in the last century, that actually far from scientific discovery, scientific observations accumulating in a way that frankly make it pretty hostile for theists, for those who believe in God. Actually, the scientific evidence that we've seen over the last century or so have actually, if anything, contributed more to the argument for the existence of God than they have detracted from it. So I'm going to dig into this a little bit because I think it's fascinating. We can obviously if there is a God, if this scientific evidence is true, it doesn't necessarily, of course, mean a particular endorsement of particular religions. But if there is evidence, if the evidence is that actually there is now also that science and theism, if you like, are converging, then it really fundamentally changes the way in which we think about the world, the universe, and ourselves, and of course, God himself. So I'm delighted to say that I'm doing this, recording this week with one of the two authors of a new book that's being published in England. Michel-Yves Bolloré and Olivier Bonnassies are two Frenchmen with a scientific background. They published a book called God, the Science, the Evidence. It was published, I should say, a few years ago, initially in French and in continental European languages. It's just been published in English. And again, their argument is that the science, the evidence, is actually supportive of the existence of God, increasingly supportive of the existence of God. And so we're going to dig into that and try and understand what it is that they think actually supports that case. So I'm delighted to say that one of the authors of this book, Michel-Yves Bolloré, joins me now. Michel-Yves, thank you very much indeed for joining Free Expression.
Thank you, Gerry. Thank you very much.
So you've tackled a big subject, I think it's fair to say, the question of God and science. Tell us, if you would, a little bit before we get into the details of the book and the arguments, how you came to write this book.
Well, in fact, the world is very divided between people who believe in materialism. It means that they believe in matter and there is nothing else, and some other who believes that there is a creator God, whatever they are, Jews, Muslim, or Christians. And now it's divided in Europe, probably less in the United States, but in Europe we are divided more or less 50-50. So many people now are just asking themselves, where is the truth? Because it's difficult, because this division is passing inside the families. For example, myself, my son-in-law, my American son-in-law is an atheist or an agnostic at least. So it's this division in the family. So people are looking for answers. And we were looking to know if there is a book for the general public, yet completely exact, with all what science and reason could say about the existence of God. And we realized that this book does not exist, did not exist. So with my friends and co-author, Olivier Bonnassies, we thought we had to write this book. It is really important.
Before we get into it, a little bit of your own background. I think you've been a believing Christian, a Catholic for all of your life, most of your life, but you're also an engineer by training and by profession. And I'm wondering how you've handled through your life the tension between science and religion. We're going to discover maybe there isn't one, but I wonder how your interpretation of science and your understanding of God and your faith, how those two things interacted.
Well, by family, my family is in the origin from the west of France, Brittany, which is traditionally a Christian, a very Catholic country, a little bit like Ireland. And so we have in our family always been Catholic. And when I was young, I was not just asking myself this question. It was obvious. And then after, I've been I loved science, and I've been training, as you say, in science. I am an engineer in computers, but I love science very much. And when I became adult, I thought that it was not possible that there would be a conflict between science and faith. Because if science had proven, for example, or shows that God does not exist, I would have preferred the truth and decided that I would get rid of the religion. What is important is to know the truth. So as I was both a Christian and a scientist, I had to dig this question. So I have been really studying this for a long, long time, reading articles, reading books, discussing with people. So when I reached, perhaps I was 60 or something like that, I had a good already a good knowledge of this question of two, and I was decided to dig into the question to be sure that there was no contradiction between faith and religion. And I have discovered that, which I didn't know completely, just partly, I have discovered that in fact the new discoveries of science are bringing an incredible number of very strong evidence for the existence of a creator God.
Let's get into those details. As I've said, and you've kind of addressed, it's long been generally thought, I think, in sort of the intellectual world that the advance of science, that the more science has advanced, the more religion has retreated, that many things that early humans and even relatively late humans into the Middle Ages and up to the Enlightenment, many things that humans ascribe to divine action, we discovered there was a perfectly straightforward physical material explanation for. And as that's gone on, that process does seem to have been, to many people anyway, almost inexorable. Religion is increasingly something that's only observed really or believed by people who don't understand that science, that this is the way science works. So in your book, you talk about the great reversal, and you've just sort of hinted at it there, which is that as we accumulate more scientific evidence, actually we've reached a point where maybe instead of, continuing to cast doubt on the existence of God, you're saying that actually this great reversal, this scientific evidence is beginning to suggest strong evidence for the existence of God.
Yes, which is incredible. And it's important that people know that there is a huge reversal of science from a science who seemed opposed to the existence of God. We are now in a century where science is the best ally of God. So if we come back on what you say, it's perfectly true that if we go from Renaissance in 1500, more or less, at that time, 100% of the people believed in God in Europe. And then modern science appeared, and there has been several shocks for the Christians. The first shock we know is Copernicus and Galileo. They showed that the Earth was not at the center of the universe, and that the Earth was revolving around the sun at the opposite of what they believe. It was a shock. Then there has been a second shock, which is that laws and simple laws and mathematical equations could explain all this. And this was with Newton, Descartes, and Laplace. And it was really simple, the laws of gravitation that we know from Newton. And we know the very funny story, interesting story of the French mathematician Laplace coming to visit Napoleon and tell him and showing him all the equation of the solar system. And Napoleon would have said, but Mr. the French mathematician, where is God in your equations? And Laplace would have responded to Napoleon, sire, I didn't need the hypothesis of God to explain the universe. So what is interesting in this story is we don't know, of course, it is completely true or not. It's perhaps too beautiful to be. However, what is important is this. We don't need God anymore to explain the universe. And the philosophers came just afterward during the 18th century. And what they said is that if we don't need God to explain the universe, there is a very simple reason for that. It's just that God does not exist at all. And then there has been some more shocks. There was a shock of Buffon, who explained that the Earth was not a few thousand years old, but million years. And then came after the evolution with Lamarck and Darwin. So that was a terrible shock for the Christians in Europe, Lamarck and Darwin. And after there has been one more shock, perhaps with Marx and Freud, because not only it was not necessary or to have God to explain the world, but Marx and Freud said they are really the opium of the people. We must get rid of the idea of God to make people happy, to make humanity happy, to make the poor wealthy, and to give the freedom to everybody, including sexual freedom. So in the 1900s, after all this shock, as you said, exactly as you mentioned, science seemed to explain everything. God was not necessary at all. And as you said also, it seemed to everybody that science would always go in the same direction. And what is fantastic, what was surprising, is that at the opposite of what everybody thought, the new scientific discoveries, one after the other, in different fields of knowledge, came and said just right the opposite. It's not anymore possible to explain easily the universe if we don't have the creator God. So this is this great reversal that our book is recounting, is telling to the reader. And it's a fascinating story because we are just we're at the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Well, tell us what this evidence is then, as you say, that sort of reversed what seemed to be the kind of inevitable and natural course of science. What is this new scientific evidence that points in the opposite direction?
Yes, of course, we are going to be very brief, very short, because we don't have time.
Your book is
and those who are interested can read it extensively in the book. The first shock is older than people think. It's the middle of the 19th century with the discovery of a new science, thermodynamics. People do not know very much about thermodynamics, but it's an essential science. And the principle of thermodynamics is that it's very simple, but it's a revolution, that everything wears out. Voilà, everything will die. And for example, our sun that everybody thought to be eternal before, our sun will be dead and black and cold in 5 billion years from now, because in fact, it's just a tank of it's a tank of gasoline. It's not gasoline really, it is hydrogen, but there is not much difference. So everything wears out, and after the sun, all the other stars in the universe, one after the other, will die. So at the end, and everybody agrees on that, at the end, our universe will be dark, cold, and almost empty, very low density. So there is a death, which is called the thermal death of the universe. And we don't have perhaps time to extend on it, but when something dies, if it is not yet dead, it means that it has necessarily a beginning. So the first shock for the materialist came with that science. Even Einstein at the beginning had difficulties with thermodynamics, but at the end, he recognized it was absolutely true, and that even he said it is the most important science of the 20th century. So after thermodynamics, there has been another science which is we know that which is better known, which is the expansion of universe with the Big Bang. And expansion of the universe and Big Bang is also bringing the question of the beginning of the universe. Perhaps not at the Big Bang, the first Big Bang, perhaps there has been a few other before, but American scientists have discovered very recently, it was in 2003, their names are Guth, Bord, and Vilenkin, that infinite series of Big Bang was not possible. So there has been an absolute beginning sometime. And the third discovery, which has been a big shock also to materialism, is the fine-tuning of the universe.
Mm.
And after the fine-tuning, also the discovery of complexity of life. So I think that's the four scientific shocks which have happened during the 20th century. And these shocks are such that today, scientists who want to remain materialists, they have to believe that our universe had not any beginning. So they have to believe that there is an infinite number of universe, which is called the multiverse, and which is an hypothesis which is extremely strange and without the smallest evidence to build it. So today, I think this reversal of science has made of the materialism is a belief. So it has made of the materialism a belief which is probably, I think, irrational today.
Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit. The core argument is that these scientific discoveries of the last 150 years, let's say, support, I think, what's typically historically been called the kind of cosmological case for the existence of God, right? Which is that instead of us living in this infinite universe vastness with no beginning and no end, the evidence is increasingly that there was a beginning, there was a Big Bang, as you say, unless you believe in some sort of a multiverse, and that there is a kind of unique timeline, if you like, however many billions, trillions of years it is, and that if that is the case, if there was a beginning, and if this is not just infinite sort of mass, then that beginning, something had to start that. Why does that argue for God, though? I mean, why does that argue that for some if you're extra universal, extra cosmological being or entity that would start that process rather than it somehow maybe spontaneously starting? Why does that why does that point to the evidence of a God?
Well, it takes its origin a very long time ago. A Greek philosopher, very well known, 2,500 years ago, Parmenides, said this principle, which everybody agrees upon today: from nothing, nothing can come. It was in Latin. In Latin, it is ex nihilo nihil. From nothing, nothing can come outside of nothing. So it is not possible for a materialist to believe that our universe could have had an absolute beginning ex nihilo. It's not possible. If there is an absolute beginning, then there is a cause, and this cause is what we call God. So for the materialists today, they have to believe that in a way or the other, there is certainly something else. There is a universe. Our universe is coming out from another universe, and we are going back again to the multiverse. But for a materialist who wants to be coherent, the fact to get out of nothing is impossible. I think that nobody has never said that it was a possibility. Perhaps one or two scientists, but really it's not reasonable.
Can you be confident, though? I mean, again, you've done a fairly thorough review of the kind of sort of a brief overview, I should say, anyway, at least of scientific history. I mean, can you be confident that we've reached this point in the 25th year of the 21st century AD that our scientific understanding of these cosmological issues has sort of reached a kind of an endpoint, and that again the history of the history of humanity has been the continuing discovery of new evidence, of new causes, of new phenomena. How can you be confident that future scientists won't have other we have reached a point where, as you say, these three pieces of scientific evidence that we've seen in just the last 150 years, that at some point they won't be contradicted, and the argument that actually God, that doesn't require God to exist, won't once again be affirmed with some confidence.
The first point, which is important, is to see that we are not bringing absolute. Nobody is bringing absolute proof. Well, an absolute proof is something that everybody will accept and we recognize. For example, you have absolute proof in mathematics. Pythagoras' theorem is an absolute proof. Is an absolute proof of Pythagoras' theorem. So there is no absolute proof in the real world. We have a chapter to explain that. It's a little bit complicated. In the real world, we have only relative proof that we call evidence. And this is why our book, the title of our book, is God, the Science, the Evidence. We are not calling our book God, the Science, the Proof. That would be something different. We are bringing evidence. Evidence are always relative, which means that if you want to determine your mind, for example, the question of a creator God, it's important not to have one evidence. It's important to have several evidence. It's like in a court of justice where the prosecutor, to convince the jury, is bringing as many evidence as possible to get a conviction so that the jury can make his decision. So here is the same. There is no absolute proof, but there are many evidence that there is a creator God today. And we have in our mind, we have a scale, and we have the two sides of the scale. In one side of the scale, there are the evidence that a creator God is necessary to explain the universe. So this is really one side of the scale. And in the other side of the scale, we have almost nothing. So a normal mind should consider today that there are many evidence for a creator God. But as you say, we don't know what will be the future. That we don't know. But if we have to make a decision for ourselves today, we can make a decision only with what we have, and it is a photo of the science today. So our book is giving the photo of the science as it is today, and of course, we don't know at all what will be the science in 100 years from now.
We'll talk about some of the other arguments too. Again, that's the core argument. But you look at some of the other arguments that have historically been made for the existence of God. One of those arguments, again, which you seem to find quite powerful, and many of us do, is the argument from design. The sort of the kind of teleological argument, which is that, or put another way, which is that the conditions in which we find ourselves, the fact that we are here living on Earth on a planet precisely the right distance from the sun to be able to exist. All of and you go through them, there are millions and millions of scientific conditions that must obtain in order for life to be as it is. And you say, it would be an extraordinary coincidence if they were not somehow put in motion if they were not created by someone or something. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I find that's always an argument that I think appeals to a lot of people when they think about this. That some people refer to sometimes as the argument about the contingency of human existence. That somehow this idea that we should be here and in all of these conditions it would just be some extraordinary accident. That doesn't seem to many people to be intellectually satisfying.
Yes, the word for that is the fine-tuning of the universe. There is a fine-tuning for our planet Earth, as you mentioned, for example, the distance to the sun. We know that our planet Earth has a fantastic fine-tuning. But the materialist answer, and everybody can answer, and which is true, that as there are billions of planets in the universe, the fact that our planet Earth is very good doesn't prove anything, because there are billions of planets. So it's just a question of chance. And this is a perfectly acceptable refutation of this argument. So the fine-tuning of the universe is not on Earth, on the planet Earth, it is on the universe itself. The universe itself is built, we know now, on a certain 20 or 30 numbers, different numbers. And we know that these numbers are extraordinarily fine adjusted. Sometimes just, after 15th decimal, we can't change one digit of 15 decimal because the universe would not exist anymore. So the question is there, you can't answer that with the fact that there are many things, because the universe is just itself and just alone. So what do say the materialists today? The scientists who are materialists today, they recognize that our universe is finely tuned, and they say it's true that it is fantastic. But what they adopt as a position for them is that we are living in a multiverse system, which means that our universe is only one universe. There are billions and billions of other universes which are not so finely tuned, and perhaps there is no life and nothing in it. But we are lucky, we are in the good one, and that's all. So this is the answer that the materialist can give to the fine-tuning of the universe. But it's true that the fine-tuning of universe is really striking, and some top scientists like Fred Hoyle, a major scientist of the 20th century, has changed his mind. He was an atheist, and he has become a deist, just considering the fine-tuning, because he said it's just impossible. So the fine-tuning, I think, it's extraordinary, compelling argument for the necessity of a creator God today.
Let's talk about what this God may be. Again, you and I have a sort of traditional Catholic religious understanding of it. Other people have, there are obviously many faiths, and there have been many faiths. But if you accept this argument, and you can accept that the scientific evidence, as you've said, over the last century or so, has certainly seems to have moved in a way that is certainly more favourable to opening up the possibility of a belief in God. Tell us, what do these arguments, these cosmological arguments, these teleological arguments, the argument, as you say, the fine-tuning argument, do they tell us anything about the identity of that God? Could all this just be consistent with some extraordinary machine type figure, or some being, something that is just able to sort of press a button and start all this in motion? Does it tell us anything about the idea of a benign God, or indeed, even as some people might think, a malign God, overlooking his creation, or her creation, dare I say, their creation, pressing buttons here and there? I mean, how are we to make sense of this idea of a God that set all this in motion?
So no, science and reason cannot say anything about who is God. Science and reason can say God exists. This is what science and philosophy before, and many other fields of reason, we can say that it is impossible that a universe as beautiful, complicated, fine-tuned exists. The only conclusion is that there is a creator God. But science and reason have no possibility to know who is God, and this can be known only by revelation. So we Christians, or we Judeo-Christian, we have the revelations through the Bible, and reading the Bible, we can know, and after, of course, if we are Christian, with the gospel, who is God, what he thinks, what he wants, what he's offering, what he's looking for. All this is known by revelation only. There is no possibility to know something of God outside of revelation. The only thing outside revelation we can know is that he exists for sure.
So again, atheists or agnostics would say, well, look, one of the things they would argue is there are so many religions, there are so many faiths in the world. There are the three major faiths, but there are tens of thousands of faiths, and there have been through history, from pantheistic religions to the monotheistic religions we have today. Is this just man trying to make sense of God? And if so, what gives any particular faith any validity? Or is that, as you say, is that just, are we just entirely dependent on revelation? And what if I'm someone who doesn't get the revelation? How does this manifest itself in terms of the way people interact with their faith, and indeed interact with the idea of God?
So we are Christian. We believe because it is always been in the gospel, in Saint Paul, and in many other, and in the Bible, that we can reach to the existence of God by reason. And the Bible say that if we are not able to make this conclusion, looking at heavens, the beauty and the grandeur and the magnificence of the universe can lead us to understand that there is a creator. After, to know, for example, that God is love, which we believe when we are Christian, to know that it's only the possibility, the only thing is a revelation. So what should do somebody who would reach the conclusion that God exists? How should he goes to make the choice of his religion? It's true that there are many religions on earth. What does it prove? It proves at least that the feeling of the large majority of the humans on earth is that there is certainly God to explain the world. Now, the revelations are very different, and you have, as you say, we have all the Christian faith, the Judaism, we have the Muslim, we have also the Hindus, and we have the Buddhist. So we have to work and to see what looks like the more logical. It would be another book, it would be other books, and it would be other interview to discuss why Christianity is the most logical of the faith. But I think it would be something very different to another moment.
I'm trying to understand from the scientific, the evidence point of view. The God that you say is revealed by the scientific evidence doesn't really direct us in any particular religious direction. It's not God as the author, not just of the universe, but of the author of a moral code. It doesn't necessarily imply an afterlife or the separate existence of the spirit from the body. It doesn't, none of those things that we think of, most religious people think of when they think about God, are necessarily implied by the scientific argument. It could literally just be that there was this being, this super powerful, this omniscient and omnipowerful being that just sort of pressed the button and started it all. There's no necessary religious, theological set of propositions that really emerge from that, are there?
Yes, exactly. During the 18th century, the philosophers were frequently deist. Deist is that they believed that there is a creator God, because it was impossible for them to think it was otherwise. But for the deist, God is indifferent to the human being. And the human being can be then indifferent to God because God doesn't care. So in that case, this is deism. It's a possibility. We cannot. Science cannot conclude on that. Science cannot help us between deism, Christianism, and Judaism, etc. Science cannot do anything. It's another investigation that we have to do to find the right directions. If we believe that God exists, what is his name? It's very interesting. It's other books. It's another path. Perhaps we have to ask God himself to help us. I don't know. For me, of course, I'm Christian since a very long time, and I've been not only working on science proving that God exists, but also to see all the logic of Christianity. Christianity is extremely logic. It is all our beliefs are very logic, and also they correspond to the feeling we have inside ourselves. So there is, I think, a very good adequation between the choice of intelligence and the choice of Christianity.
All right. Just quickly, just one very quick point before I move on very briefly to the end and to discuss particularly the sort of Judeo-Christian tradition that you talk about in the book. There are obviously, again, you're very careful to say that what you're talking about is not a proof of God, but just the strong, compelling evidence for the existence of God. Again, if you do take a religious view of God, and you take particularly say the Christian view that there is a God and there's an afterlife, and that this life is about living life according to the sort of highest moral values. If you take that if the idea that there is scientific evidence for the existence of God slightly undermines the case for faith, doesn't it? I mean, if you can, again, I'm not suggesting you've said there is a proof, but if you can accumulate enough evidence, then kind of everybody has to believe in God in the way that everybody has to believe in gravity. You know what I mean? There's so the specific moral virtue, if you like, that many religions preach, that comes from believing in a God and following his precepts, is kind of taken away if it's scientifically just the case that there very probably is a God. Isn't that something of a problem for faith, for religious faith?
No, I don't think it's true, because there is a confusion between the existence of God and faith. Faith and the existence of God are two things different. The existence of God is just to know that it's not possible to explain the universe without a cause, without a being, all-powerful being who has made the universe. This is the existence of God. Faith is something different. It is the fact to believe and follow and adhere, an adhesion to the teaching. We can have, for example, we know that the devil, he believes in the existence of God. He knows it very well, of course, but he has no faith in God. Faith is something which is in the heart. It is something like love. It is something like the decision to follow the teaching. This is faith. Faith is an adhesion to a teaching and to what, if we are Christian, to what Christ says. This is faith. For example, just for fun, I'm French. We have a president which I've never met, Mr. Macron. Well, I believe that he is existing. I've never met him really. I believe that he is existing, though I've never met him. But I don't have faith in him, because faith would think that he's right, that he's intelligent, and this is going on the right path. And I don't think it's the case. So I don't have faith for Mr. Macron. When you have faith to God, or when you have faith to Jesus, it means that you believe that he is right and you want to follow the same path.
Understood. And it's a particularly apt example, isn't it? Because I do know that President Macron has in the past at least compared himself to a god, and Jupiter. So maybe if you have faith in Monsieur Macron, you have to have faith in Jupiter too. But we'll leave that to the mythologists and indeed to the politicians. Very quickly, finally, Jean-Michel, because I'm really fascinated by this. But again, you do so while you make very clear that that your argument is about the evidence, the scientific evidence for the existence of God. Religion is a matter of revelation. You do nonetheless dive into the religious issue. You are Catholic, as am I, and you talk about in the book, and your co-author too, talk in the book about different religious traditions, but in particular about how compelling you argue is the logic, if you like, of the Judeo-Christian religion, that the Old Testament and the New Testament, and kind of everything that follows from that. And I suspect this is where you might lose some people with the book, because again, though I speak as a Catholic, as a believing Catholic myself, and I'm sure many of our listeners are believing Christians, they will wonder, well, and you talk about, for example, fascinatingly, but I think, again, some people would question this, examples of miracles that have been performed, the miracle of the appearance of Our Lady at Fatima in Portugal in 1917, with all of the implications that had politically and everything else. When you get into that field where you go from talking about scientific evidence to taking us down a route which kind of says actually there's a logic to the virgin birth and the resurrection and the existence of miracles and saints and martyrs and all this kind of that may be that is revelation, right, rather than science, and so I wonder how you make that case compellingly as you move beyond the question of scientific evidence.
Well, you're perfectly right. If we had in mind only the volume and the sales of our book, it would have been wise, perhaps, to just end the book before and not to include chapters like the Bible or Jesus of Fatima, probably, if we were looking for success and money. But in fact, it's not the case. We wanted to have on the table and to give to people who want to reflect on this question all the arguments. And we don't care if this will create criticism and obstacles for our book. We want people to have all this. This is why we have a chapter about the Bible, which is, I think, extremely interesting and extremely, I would say, even funny, because people believe that the Bible is an accumulation of nice legend, and it's not at all. It's extremely intelligent and extremely accurate. But we have also a chapter about Jesus, because there is a big question for all of us. For any materialist or any other religion, how is it possible? We are today in 2025, which means that it is 25 years after the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. How is it possible that a man who has not written a book, not written even a chapter, not even one page, not even one line, who has never had any participating to any war, governing anything, winning any battle, how is it possible that this unknown guy of a poor village is now making the date for which everybody agrees on? If you have today a Chinese Buddhist signing a contract with an Hindu Indian, they will date the contracts with 2025.
You could take a rather cynical view and say that was just a reflection less of Jesus and more of the power of the British and Spanish and other empires. But
I think anybody normal has to face this question: who could be Jesus? Who could be Jesus? It's interesting for us Catholic also and Christian, because Jesus asks this question to us directly in the gospel, if you remember, when he's with his apostle near Caesarea, and he says, "And for you, who am I?" For you, who am I? So I think that this question is not only to the apostle, this question is also to you and me today. Who is Jesus? There are very few possible answers, to this question. Only 5 answers are possible, and they are also, all of them are impossible to defend. Well, the first is that Jesus has never existed. The second is that he was just a wise man, and that's all. And the third is that he was a prophet, but not God. And the fourth, that it was a hoax. He was a crook who failed to succeed. He was trying to take the power by force and by violence, and he did not succeed. That's all the 5 possibilities. And if you read the chapter,
the 5th is that he was telling the truth, that he was indeed the son, that he is the Son of God.
Yeah. And the last one, of course, if all these possibilities do not fit at all, there is only one left. Which one? The one that he told himself is the Son of God. So if we just consider that the 5 first possibilities are impossible, completely impossible, and I think it is the case, then we have to conclude that the last possibilities, which is the one he said, the one that all the apostles said after, is true. So it's a very, I think this chapter, Jesus, who could he be? Jesus, who could he be? This chapter, I think, is extremely interesting because it's a question which Jesus is asking to ourselves today. And we have everything which is necessary to be able to answer to this question. Because Jesus has said many things which would be completely crazy if he's not God. For example, he said that before Abraham, I am. Well, that's completely crazy. He said your sins are forgiven. If he's not God, this is completely crazy. It's even very grave. And so nothing can work, you see. So I think it's a very interesting chapter. And we are writing this book for ordinary people. We are writing this book for people like you and me and for our families, children. We want that they have in only one book, only one volume, everything that can help them to make a decision. So the first part, which is the scientific part, is you're right to decide that there is a creator God. And in some ways, probably the second part is helping people to make a more precise choice of who is God.
I wish we could talk longer. Fascinating, especially getting into some of these specific religious questions. But it's a fascinating book. It's just being published right now for the first time. I think it's been published in continental European languages and other languages for the last few years. Just now being published in English. It's available now, and it's called God, the Science, the Evidence. The authors are Michel-Yves Bolloré, to whom you've been listening, and his co-author Olivier Bonnassies. And I want to thank you, Michel-Yves. Thank you very much indeed for joining Free Expression.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this talk.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I'll be back next week with another episode. Probably this one less godly and celestial in content, perhaps more rooted in some of the earthly things that we've seen. But I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. Please do join us again next week. In the meantime, have a great week and goodbye.